All right, we are live. Good morning, everybody. It's 9 a.m. here in Eastern Ontario. This is Matthew Britt coming at you. Beautiful day here. Lots of snow hitting the ground, but I'm nice and warm inside. I'm going to have a great conversation this morning with a new friend of mine, someone who's actually been collaborating with us for quite some time and has been on a very empowering mission over the past 20 years with her business, the Global Food Collective. I'd like to introduce Robin Richardson. Robin, welcome to the show. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Matthew.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I live in the windiest city in the U.S.
Oh, yeah?
And it's windy today.
It's the windiest city in the United States, huh?
It is. By virtue of the way it's located in the mountains and so on, it is pretty consistent, adding some complications to a food forest.
Yeah.
But it is a regular on almost a daily basis. And when it is not windy, it's very unusual.
Oh, wow.
So very intriguing life here. Lots
For everybody
of jokes.
listening, where are you?
Livingston, Montana.
Livingston, Montana, the windiest city in the U.S. So the Windy City title has officially been taken from Chicago.
It is. I always thought that was Chicago, but it is not. And the great part about Livingston is that everyone here makes jokes about it all the time. So there's all sorts of memes and all kinds of things like, should we call 911? There's no wind today scenarios. And so they do enjoy it. It's a beautiful location right outside of Yellowstone Park.
Oh, beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I've been to Montana many times, but never over to Livingston. And I always found it beautiful there, though. Just big sky, like the name. Lots of space, beautiful.
Mm-hmm. It's great. It's excellent.
So, Robin, why don't you just let everybody know a little bit about you and your history and Global Food Collective, and then we'll dive into a bit of an interview here.
Sounds great. Thanks, Matthew. I was thinking about this a little bit relative to your invitation and what your agenda is, what your mission is, and so on. And I was thinking that maybe I was a little bit of a precursor to parts of it. So if you don't mind, I'm going to just relay a little bit of a story that I think a lot of people don't really exactly put together, but I am from Alaska. Global Food Collaborative was established in the state of Alaska, and it was born out of an idea that I had when I was pretty much growing up, which is that the state was obviously populated by tribes all over who lived in a kind of a nomadic life following the wild food and game. And they had all kinds of really intriguing ways that they harvested and ate what nourished them for, generations. And I always thought that was intriguing, but what I didn't understand was that we'd had this food history, and there were very, very many different chapters in it. After looking at the indigenous population, and this is the one that Weston Price studied about how healthy they were and so on. It goes back to that. Mm-hmm. Then in the 30s, during the Depression, people in Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin were transplanted. 203 families moved to Alaska and were put into a area to develop farms because food was difficult to get, right? It was hard to grow and so on. So the federal government stepped in and created this environment in the Matanuska Valley for farmers. And they did produce food. And it was interesting that the general who took them to this location actually barked orders at them constantly about the fact that the need for a sustainable food supply in that population. So fast forward to the fact that in the post-World War II, which is kind of where all stories start these days, right?
Yeah,
Post
good
World War
observation.
II, yeah, post World War II, things started coming fast and furious, and we in Alaska wanted to be part of what everybody else was doing and have prosperity. So they invited in the military, which started several permanent military bases.
Mm,
And this was a really big turning point in that history because the military developed a lot of infrastructure. So the supply chains could be longer and a little bit more sophisticated, right?
mhm.
And this is about when I remember in the very early days, we fished, we harvested our own food, we had our own gardens, and we traded with people and had a really strong community.
Yep.
Okay. Then came oil. Then came major money and development into our state and even more infrastructure built. So what they had at the beginning of Global Food Collaborative, when I formed it, was a very long, sophisticated supply chain, sometimes starting maybe even down in Jim's area, Florida, let's say with oranges, and coming all the way up the contiguous US, through Canada or on the water, into Alaska, and then out via air or roads to various different villages. If you can even imagine what the end product is in nutrients that those people got, right? So in 2005, I started Global Food Collaborative because Alaska was really well known for fishing, for timber, for mining, for oil. In fact, those were encrypted in our capital as the natural resources. The
Mm,
challenge is that it's kind of a colony where we were really dependent on everyone else to harvest these items or mine these items. So Canada was a big investor, Japan was a big investor, a lot of lower 48 investors in the state. But what was happening is the knowledge wasn't really there about how to produce food. And that was always a soft spot for me. So I was thinking about the ventures that you've been on with independence and freedom related to food forest abundance and what you do. And my work really started in learning and sharing knowledge of how the food system even worked in the state. And that's how Global Food Collaborative was formed, is that it was designed to connect private businesses who had one element of the food supply chain, maybe how to harvest the potatoes, how to package a particular ingredient, how to transport it, and pull those people together so that we, as those residents in the state, understood how it worked, so we could even create some component of it or fill an aspect and create the jobs and learn how to grow and develop food. And anyway, that's how we started. And it was in some sense to design a system where people had independence and sort of liberty from a different system
mhm.
that we had become very dependent. In the state of Alaska, there are estimates that it is 98% dependent upon that current supply chain to lower 48.
Wow.
So what's happened, I did an interview last week with a small store, grocery store there. She said that there were 500 dairies in the state at one time. I believe there were 500 places to probably purchase milk of some sort and dairy
Mhm,
products. There are
mhm.
now 2.
2 in the whole state?
And 2, one at the northern side of the state where there's little to no population, and one that's on an island
Oh
far
my.
from the population base. So these are the things that happened to us over the course of 50 years and why this was born. So where's the solution? Because you guys are always talking, Jim's always
Yeah.
talking about solutions. You're always bringing on solution makers. The solution, in my view, was to get the private companies, entrepreneurs, innovators together. I found great success in putting one with one so that they could talk, meet each other, and so on. The state of Alaska is 500,000 square miles. Not easy, because people are far from each other and weren't really familiar, village to village, community to community, how that structure worked in each community, what were the demands, what were the grocery stores, who produced food, so on and so forth. And it was a partial learning situation. And I would learn, and then I would share in a newsletter to individuals, and then encourage people to talk to each other, do lots of different site visits like you're doing at Food Forest in Florida, and encourage people to get together in every conceivable way we possibly could. And over time, what happened was people started to talk, think, act, and develop new products, locally grown, local systems, regional systems, learning from each other, sharing information. And out of that, we could measure the increase of local food production and independence. And it was great. It was absolutely great. So that was kind of the foundation of Global Food Collaborative. It was really designed to empower people and educate people in a system that we weren't really part of. Small and medium-sized companies in the state weren't really given invitation into how the big systems worked. And over time, we developed the knowledge by working with some of the bigger companies, asking how we could solve problems by smaller companies. But what has transpired is pretty amazing relative to a lot of new producers, market gardens, individual ranchers, value added, so on and so forth, equipment individuals coming in and packaging individuals looking for opportunities to help grow these businesses. So it's an exciting place. And relative to gardens, Matthew, it's really exciting because gardens have come back in a big way for those people that sort of lost touch with them, particularly in the tribal communities. So I think, whether someone is working on this in the state of Alaska, they probably are, but the food forests, a lot of those villages have realized that they have to go back a generation or two to their grandparents to ask them, how did they grow food?
Yeah.
And they are discovering and uncovering old gardens. And I never saw these in my lifetime. So they did grow food to sustain themselves, even though they had the richest fisheries, the richest wild game, so on and so forth. They really use those farms and are bringing them back in a really big way. So
yeah, well, there's native plant life that would grow there, so it would only make logical sense that they would capitalize on that to produce some edible plants for themselves. They grow, why not take advantage of that scenario?
right, and especially their eyes have been opened relative to the nourishment that they've gotten in, let's say, a gallon of milk. When they're seeing a gallon of milk at $13 a gallon and there's nothing nourishing in it, they're realizing they're struggling like every other community with health, and that maybe there's another way, and maybe it's the way that they actually originally lived.
Yes. I would guess most people have no idea how their food supply gets to them, and like the process from where it started to how it arrives at your table. Is that something you have a good understanding of and can kind of give us a high level overview about?
Yeah, I mean, it varies so much and it's changing an awful lot. But generally, the challenge is that there are many, many, many profit centers in between where a food is harvested. And that's not even the beginning, right? Because for farms, it's the seeds and, sometimes chemicals, sometimes not. all of those aspects to all the inputs. But there are a lot more people in between in that supply chain than you would imagine. Individuals who do the certifications, individuals who come in and do the weighing of your products or set up a system for cleaning the products, right? If you really break down and look at all of those, it tells a story of how that food gets to you
Mm-hmm.
and really who's touched it, how long it's taken, what kinds of products have been added to it and chemicals and so on and so forth. But traditionally, when it is harvested, it is also processed, even if it's minimally processed and cleaned. So, we remember some of the stories about the lettuce and the challenges with the fact that it was adulterated in California. And so how would you deal with that? Well, they really worked on the cleaning, first. Now the packaging says it's cleaned 3 times. So
Yeah.
you can imagine that is, first of all, when you touch a perishable product like that many times, you do understand that the nutrient value sort of starts to dissipate a little bit.
Decline. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. But let's say it goes through that minimally processed and then weighed and packaged and so on and so forth. And that can be by 1 or 2 companies, and then it can be transported. So then there's another company usually, right? And usually in the transportation, depending on how far you are, it will go to distribution. This is a simple way. It would be going to distribution and then going out to your particular retail or your restaurant or food service of some sort. And then at that point, you come into play, right? But that's a relatively short supply chain. Oftentimes it's stored, and it can be at various different ways along that supply chain. So what people don't often know is how that sausage is made.
Yeah.
Because when they do start to understand that it doesn't start at the grocery store or in the restaurant, really, and start asking those questions. And I really encourage a lot of the people that you have who watch your show are families who are homeschool families, people
Yep.
who are really working with their kids. And I would suggest that these discussions go on around the dinner table
Yeah.
about how grateful how grateful we are for the food that's given to us. And then a little bit about where that food did come from, whether you're eating an egg from the chicken out in your own yard. We all have a responsibility and benefit from our children understanding that supply chain and understanding where their food comes from and being grateful for all of the hard work it takes to create food to sustain us and why we're eating it. That's another point that doesn't oftentimes come up. I do want to mention that relative to a number of different issues that happened to me personally in the areas of health, and reading more and more on the areas of health, we really took a turn with Global Food Collaborative to focus more on or exclusively on those foods and that heal, essentially planetary and human health. So we are a membership organization. We work with various different private businesses who are stewards of land and soil, and we tell stories really of what they're doing, because it is amazing over and over and over the number of people out there doing remarkable things in their business or in this world that are impacting and benefiting us, that their stories are never told. A lot of people are telling the stories. You are in a great way. And there are a lot of smaller businesses who have amazing leadership, amazing vision, people who take responsibility for their work and how they're leaving the planet in a better place. And they're all over. They're all over. I sometimes I just uh, am surprised how well thought and mindful they are about what they're doing.
Mhm.
They are not lemmings, they're not following the next person, and I do think we've had enough of that. They are really reading, they're coming from their own places, most coming from experiences with health, right?
Yeah.
Where they've been in a health system, they've seen something that's changed their mind, and they're really taking it, taking it full course, and those people that in my mind are some of the biggest change agents are those in the soil health arena,
Mm.
because they understand the cells and the microbes, uh, what it takes to create the healthiest soils, the healthiest plants, and coincidentally, the healthiest human beings.
Yes.
And I see that more. I would like to see that more on the health professional side, that
Mhm.
they are as well spoken about soil health, ocean health, um, because I think there's a lot to learn there. And ultimately, our goal is to have one language,
Mm.
which is the two, soil health and human health, so that people can navigate between the two, because farmers are able to navigate between the two. If you've read some of the recent books on soil health from some of the world's experts, even their paragraphs uh, go from one topic of human health to soil health without any transition hardly. They
Mm.
see it as one, and we all need to see that as one.
Who would be some of these experts that you know of?
Well, I mean, one of the ones that I'm reading right now is Nicole Masters.
Nicole Masters, okay.
Mhm. And, she's written a book. She's well known on soil health. Another individual that's been in the food business for a long time is, Dan Kittredge from the Bionutrient Association. He can go back and forth pretty well. Um, I would suggest, a young, very young man who, uh, was triggered to look at this, I think, from his grandfather having cancer, and his name is Macaulay Kincaid, and he is in Missouri. Very young, very well spoken on human health as it applies to his plant health. Um, our members are extremely well spoken on navigating between the two. One of them in particular, his name is Kelly Lazinski, and he's from North Dakota. Again, these people are in places that you wouldn't expect to necessarily land on individuals who are at the leading edge of their field, but they are. And Kelly and Deanna have a farm uh, where they've really devoted about 14 years ago that they would transition it completely focused on human health.
Hmm.
That's what they wake up and focus on every day with their grain farm. And they are now selling some pasta products and so on, but they can speak to plant health better than anyone around, um, as an activist, almost as an activist, as a leader, and its relationship to human health. So these people are out there and they're doing phenomenal things. Our health coaches are also tracking well on those topics. And sometimes in our meetings, we have discussions where they compare human health cells, human cells, to plant cells. And it gets very detailed, Matthew.
Yeah.
It gets very detailed, and it is absolutely incredible when you find out that they're the similarities of the two, and how nature, it just never ceases to surprise.
Well, I love that topic, the soil, and how we've neglected it over the past, well, interesting. We'll bring it back to the post-World War era, where we decided when war was finished that they had to utilize these chemicals that were being used during the war in a new way, because you couldn't risk all that profit, right? Or all that, I guess, all those liabilities to go away if they weren't utilized. The balance sheet would be negatively impacted. So they found a way to repurpose many of these things. And conveniently enough, used for death in one place, now moved to use for growing food, but death, actually. And when I say they were utilized for death in that way, it's because they're killing everything around them in nature, except the one thing usually they're intending to grow, which has ultimately been genetically modified to be able to withstand those chemicals. And what's happened is we've completely destroyed the soil health and all of nature's systems where we're trying to grow food in these industrial farming systems. And that has had massively detrimental effects on human health, but also nature and our ecosystems and insects and the microbiome in the soil. And because of that, you're seeing a massive decline in human health, nutrient density, et cetera, in the foods, and massive profits for the chemical companies. And unfortunately, it's put the farmers in such a predicament, because they're conditioned now to believe that they can't have a good yield without these chemical inputs. And it's not true. Would you agree that this is not true? They don't need those things?
Most of the members that we're working with are not utilizing those.
Awesome.
They've reduced their inputs considerably, and they're using what was used previously to, and it's not about yields, it's about healthy food. If you start out with
It should
that,
be about, yep.
right? And there are margins in that for them, and they're all playing with sort of those spreadsheets relative to how to create a sustainable farm in this new environment. And of course, there have to be markets for that. So we've been doing some interviews with individuals who are recognizing the value of chemical-free foods and purchasing those and reselling them or using them as an ingredient. But the chemical onslaught in our human bodies overall, we were not built for it. So unless we stop and move back, it's not a pretty picture.
No.
And so in the spirit of being solvers, my work is to collect as many of those individuals together, promote and support and enhance them, and tell their stories. When you're talking about the health coming from the soil, a, a lot of these individuals are moving at a very fast pace in their discoveries of how they do that and the development of their crops and spinning off new kinds of businesses and developing metrics. Because if you wake up every morning and you say, our job today on this farm is to create healthy products. So we're going to start with the soil. Because you have to be able to measure, are you making an impact? How are you making an impact? So we have, for example, one of our members is Erin Martin in Tulsa. And she has a company called RX Tulsa or RX Oklahoma. But essentially, she works to create prescription boxes, right, for North Tulsa. She works with a doctor and promotes and supports local food producers, but creates these boxes trying to reduce chronic disease in her community, right? She measures the performance. She takes the results to the state legislature. She talks to them about the reduction in medical costs. talks to them about the reduction of costs, even in the own community, hospitalizations and so on, as a result of eating healthy food. This is where we're going. Is a lot of these individuals are putting together metrics. Aaron would like to replicate that program all over, anywhere that, blue zone cities, anywhere that's seeking a way to reduce costs. Because not only are the farmers developing really healthy foods, and I don't want to just say farmers, because I work with a lot of seafood companies who are stewards and trying to develop newer and better ways, moving as fast as they can to staying as close to the original resource, but not having a large footprint, and creating the healthiest product with minimal process, right?
Yeah.
Minimal processing. And that can be sticky as well in that particular industry. But these individuals are major contributors to organizations in communities where they are trying to do the metrics on healing. And the successes that we're seeing, Aaron's doing a fabulous job in Tulsa, Springfield Community Gardens in Springfield, Missouri, is amazing. And what they do is a great practice, which is what Aaron does, is they measure. So every time they do a program, they will fund it to like 70%. The remaining 30% is to measure, start to finish, their baseline. Are they having an impact? Are they having an impact on health? And almost everybody's end game is health. And that brings me to something that we don't talk about oftentimes relative to health, which is in most of the pictures when we look at people who are struggling with their health, we physically see people who might be out of shape, obese, not feeling well, so on and so forth. We've all seen the pictures in all the magazines and on the internet and so on and so forth. But my concern is that we equally concentrate on individuals who are not healthy emotionally, spiritually, mentally. This is a bigger part of the equation, and food forest abundance is a solution to that. It's really some of the literature and the studies are out there relative to the behavioral changes that food can contribute to. Those have been done by a young woman named Lucy Vincent in the UK with relative to prisons, sort of bringing down the noise, bringing down the aggression, bringing down the costs of managing. You think about the implications a lot. I know that the prison in the state of Alaska had a farm.
Yep.
I doubt they're measuring it to behavior. They're simply attempting to feed themselves. But where's the behavioral in these food forests? How is that being handled when you have schools, more aggressions, communities, more aggression? This is going to be a bigger and bigger factor. And there's not enough of us that might be healthy out there who are skilled to handle it.
So interestingly, you bring up the prisons. We spoke with a warden yesterday.
Did you?
In the state of Florida about putting a food forest on the prison. And part of what we've discovered prior to speaking with them was some studies actually around the positive impacts that growing food at the prison, having gardening programs and that type of thing had on, I want to make sure I say the word correctly, recidivism, right? And the recidivism, where they did this study, had been about 60%, telling us a story that most of the inmates, when they were released, 60% of them ended up committing crime again and would end up back in prison. And in this particular study, when they had gardening programs and the inmates were actually encouraged to be a part of it and could take ownership into it, start developing, a new purpose and a passion and connection to nature, they fell from 60% recidivism to 8%. That is a tremendous difference. And when we uncovered that, it just made us go, of course, that's what happens. Because when people have a purpose, and they can be in line with that on a day-to-day basis, and they continually have that positive feedback loop, knowing they're contributing to something bigger than themselves, they're participating in something good, it helps re-establish a foundation to then operate your life upon. And what better way for someone who has kind of been removed from society and told they're bad and put in the corner, for them to rebuild that confidence and belief and purpose and passion in their lives than to be involved in something like that. So it's something that once we really grasp that power, we now have connected with one warden, and our intention is to build a real strong case to not only have a food forest installed in this location, but also have it be something that becomes a demonstration site where they may be able to have it set up in a way where the general public can come and see it, and that these inmates can now utilize it as a way that they can share their knowledge and help other people in the general public. We don't have it all worked out yet, but these are some of the ideas that are coming from it. And then what can happen as far as spreading that throughout the United States, Canada?
Well, that's only
other parts of the
1.5
world,
million people,
right?
Matthew, that are imprisoned, roughly in the United
Roughly
States.
5 million, yeah.
1.5 million
1.5.
incarcerated, 5 million who are paroled or somehow being surveilled or in that system. That's a big audience.
That's a huge
audience to transform, right?
Yeah.
And I know that there are similar studies that have been done, like I said, in the UK by Lucy Vincent, that did the metrics also. Huge improvement, but also just reduction of staff requirements for surveillance, for aggression. The cost benefit was significant. And, you're going up against like big food, big pharma, big whatever. It's a big industry. And there are many, when you ask about food supply chain, I worked with many suppliers to that food service sector. It's a big business. They're not excited about somebody coming in and displacing them. But if you look at right, so there's always our eyes are wide open. It's great news about a warden taking this on, because I think individuals have been out there trying to figure out a new way to deal with this for a very, very long time. And I commend you for going for it. I just watched a gentleman who was touring a German prison, and the whole way they did it was so significantly different, including the food. And they just didn't have the issues. Plus, they had about 10% of the prison population. And so anyway, a lot of new ways to do it, and I love that. And I hate to transition like this into school, from prisons to schools, but there's so much alike.
Honestly, there's a lot of similarities today with the education system and kids. So
right,
kind of fits well.
The same thing happens if you are able to do a project in a school. I really would like to see more of these, and I'm doing everything I can at my end. I'd like to see a measurement.
Yep.
From changing the food, having a food forest, and then to a year down the road, 2 years down the road, 3 years down the road, how is their health? How
Yeah.
is their mental health? How
Yeah.
is their emotional health? How are they doing in society? Um, it needs to be done, and you're in a fabulous position to do it and have those of us around help support it in every conceivable way. Those numbers will tell everything.
Yes. I can tell you, I have huge hope, and I'm getting extreme validation for the hope because we've already completed one large food forest at a school. This was in Central Florida, but we've spoke with dozens already, and more continue to come to us for they're asking questions, they're wanting to see what can this do for us, how easy is this to implement, how simple is it to care for in the long run. Those kind of things are coming up very rapidly. We actually had a school do a field trip this past Saturday. They drove over 2.5 hours. 50 students, 5 adult chaperones, came to Galt's Landing for a tour. It was a tremendous success. And we're hoping that from that, they are able to inspire enough parents, teachers, school members to agree to do another food forest at another school,
Mhm.
uh, and have them set up with one. We've got multiple conversations going where we're, early stages of just kind of deciding how large of a food forest that they want to put on the property and what do they want to do with that. But it's coming to us. I personally have spoke with schools across the United States and Canada, nothing in other countries yet, but these two. But there's a lot of people who are well aware that the difference it can make in the children's lives when they learn how to do this at a very young age and they participate in caring for the food and being involved in nature, getting their hands in the dirt and having a food source right there that they can then pick and consume on site, which we both know has a higher nutrient density because they'll care for the soil in a different way. They won't be spraying the chemicals because we'll utilize the permaculture principles to remove that from the system. And because they're basically taking the food from living thing on the plant to consumption in a very short supply chain, probably within a day from when it's picked to consumed, it still has that life force energy in it that it got from the soil and now going right into that human body, and the impact will be profound. Most of us, if not all of us, have heard the statement, let thy food be thy medicine and thy medicine be thy food. Logical thing to say when we really understand what food is supposed to be for us and what our bodies will do when we receive the right nutrients, right?
Right. And I think another aspect of this, whether it could be done in a private school or homeschool situation or in the food forest, is a little bit of self-awareness,
Mm-hmm.
uh, practicing with the kids, I mean, as a game or whatever, in relationship to how do they feel after they eat it? How do they feel before they eat it? How do they feel after? How do they feel an hour later, 3 hours later? Because we're clearly aware our kids, all of us, are pretty disassociated with what we're eating in terms of how it's impacting our health, right?
Yes.
So I think that's another really incredibly powerful component of this. But the schools, I have a letter on my desktop that I wrote to a superintendent of a school when there was free government money coming out to put in a greenhouse. And the superintendent, it was one-time only money, figured like that would be a good thing to do in the state of Alaska. And I have the letter that she wrote back saying no. They had other things they were going to concentrate on, but that same district has lower performing grades now. And the food is all processed in packages. It's not even a heat and serve situation anymore, right? Well, what I want to know is in these schools, all of them, what is the cost that they're spending on behavior, just like prisons?
Yeah,
What are the costs associated with that? Because I'm venturing that that is 10 times what they would pay for good quality food,
absolutely.
right? So
Yep.
we need to start looking at these equations. I think the metrics are going to be a really powerful component to all of our programs, and a really great way for us to collaborate with on issues.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, the amount of not good things that are put into our processed foods is staggering. And the negative consequences of one of the major ones, sugar, processed sugar, cheap refined sugars, the detrimental effect that those things have on children and their behavior and their addictive nature, it's astronomical how much unknown consequences are occurring. And what I mean by unknown, like they can see the behavior stuff, but they don't necessarily ever think about what's this costing us to deal with this poor behavior from one child, two children, three children, five children, 20 children of the 25 kids that are in the classroom who have started their day poorly with a processed sugary cereal, who then have a poor nutritious snack, poor nutrition based lunch, right? And on and on and on. Repeat that day in, day out, repeat that week in, week out, year in, year out. What are those costs? Right? The classroom disruptions, the time spent kids not paying attention and being reprimanded and put into timeout at lunchtime or whatever it is. No one's calculating those costs, but they have a direct correlation to
Absolutely.
the crappy food,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I can see it with my own. I have a almost 4-year-old, and lots of love to grandma and grandpa, but when she goes to grandma and grandpa's house and has the treats that grandma and grandpa give her, my wife and I are dealing with the negative consequences from the time she arrives home for at least the next day, at least. And she's a different little girl because of
Right.
all the sugar she's had.
Mm-hmm.
Her emotions, her anger, her hyperactivity, her inability to concentrate. And it's crazy how that stuff affects the little kids. And when you realize that that's how most people, unfortunately, feed themselves and their kids today,
Exactly.
it's no wonder there's so many additional behavioral and mental health issues. That what do we do in our
Mary
society?
Mary
We put,
Ernsberger is one
yeah,
of our members, and she has been doing assessments of families, because your point is it's not even just the kids, but assessments of families, and she has them start out with the first week. What are their behaviors with food? It's shocking, Matthew. These people are not eating. There's no meals. They're all fast food.
Yep.
Snacks, sugary snacks, no discipline, no autophagy, no fasting. It's just a constant eating scenario, and it would scare you to hear. But I had the same situation with my kids and my parents too. And now it's the opposite. So when I get grandkids, they get no sugar. They're getting, we're probably going the other side of the pendulum, because you're trying to correct all the wrongs that have been made, but the behaviors are out of control. And there's that old data from CDC pre-COVID that said 6 out of 10 of us have chronic disease. 4 out of 10 have more than 2. And when I saw that from an economic point of view, is so how do 4 healthy people take care of 6 sick people? That was pre-COVID. Our population has to come up with a solution to help and heal and correct our behaviors, because it's just not possible. We can't financially and emotionally handle that. You just think about going into a restaurant, going into a laundry, going into a sporting event, and you have all that illness around you, people with behaviors that are out of control and aggressions and needing help. Who's going to do that? This is why the work that you're doing is so incredibly important. Why it's so important, and why these people are heroes that are doing this type of work.
Yeah, the negative health consequences and the ripple effect into our society from that are going currently unaccounted for are just astronomical. One thing that always pops into my mind is how, and this is a sensitive topic, but we go from lifelong chronic conditions that were non-existent prior to the introduction of this massive schedule of injections that happen to children, right? We now have kids that are essentially dealing with autoimmune diseases their whole life. That's not a high quality life full of health. That's dealing with something every single day that impacts other areas of their life and overall performance in society. If you have, a chronic psoriasis or allergies or, diabetes or another autoimmune disorder that troubles you basically the whole time you're alive, that's taking up a percentage of your brain power. It's preventing you from living to your fullest. And we're not accounting for that. Another one,
right.
You talk about how we now have, 4 people to take care of 6 people. What about this thing? The numbers from an autism spectrum perspective have gone from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 32 now. And this didn't happen in thousands of years. This happened in, 60 years. And if the rates continue to increase at the rate they're going, it's predicted the next 30 years will be 1 in 2. So 1 in 2 people,
right,
with something that, when you have that, you don't die. You can
right.
live your whole life autistic. And obviously there's different levels on the spectrum, but who's going to take care of all of these people who are not able to function properly in society, needing someone to take care of them? That's a scary thing. 1 in 2.
Nothing will look like it is today. Nothing. And you go into, let's say you go into a business and a child comes in and they're out of control screaming. Grocery stores are a great example. And they're out of control screaming. Now just imagine half the people coming in are like that. Like you said, at various different levels, right?
Yeah.
But that half of them are out of control because they don't have a mechanism. One of my wake up books that I keep close always it was Autism and ADHD Diet. It was written by Barry Silberg a long time ago. And when I read that, my eyes just woke up, and it wasn't really about a diet, but it was really about the behaviors. And her best work, which is pretty much still the same on foods that contribute to it and don't. But your point about vaccines my position is we weren't built for any of this. We weren't built for any of the chemicals being put in food. We weren't built for the chemicals being put in water systems, or in medicines, vaccines, the equipment that has been utilized for testing for us, so on and so forth. We just weren't built for any of it. We don't adapt that fast. I don't know what we're still adapting to, but honestly, our bodies are finally saying enough.
Yes.
We've had it. It's over the top. And I would just like all of us to continue to shout out, stop,
Yeah.
stop,
Yeah.
stop the pesticides, stop the chemicals, stop the assaults on us. Because it's not like we have the ability to, live in a little hut away from any of it. Everyone, even in remote Alaska, gets it from, the ocean or some other, old military dumps or something. I mean, there really isn't a pristine location. So just stop don't don't add more chemicals into any one of our systems. And I speak to people in water, I speak to people in food, all of it. And you just recently did, a discussion about what's going on overhead. Why so many chemicals? And we're up against a really challenging situation, and most of it's probably, most of it is a lot money related.
Yeah, I would say
Um,
so. Yeah.
yeah,
Money and
and
power, control.
money and control and power. And we do talk a lot in our group when we're talking about improvements on areas of collaboration, that everybody pretty much states as a fact that we're all poisoned
Yeah.
and our kids are poisoned.
Yes.
And it really is, we're now in a situation of trying to remove whatever we can in any conceivable way. But why should it be like that? I posted a picture yesterday of my local grocery store, and they had all the of the pesticides, all of the insect repellents, everything in an aisle. And on the other side of the aisle was the baby formula. And I thought, that's it. There's, we shouldn't accept that. Those shouldn't be there any longer.
No, it's the consequences of the chemical usage in air, water, food, lotions, shampoos, cleaning products, etc., have been catastrophic to human health. Then those same chemicals, just tweaked in different ways, are in the solutions, right? The pharma industry,
Right.
the sorcery of pharmacopoeia. And what has been now, we have the chemicals making us sick, and we have the chemicals supposedly making us better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just it's a massive fraud being perpetuated on us, all for that money and power. And I want to frame this the right way. I don't think everybody who's doing this is evil. Everybody's doing the best they can at the time with the resources that they have. And a lot of what's happening, they're conditioned a certain way because they use the school system as a way to narrow people's focus and then also put blinders on them so they can't see outside of that thing, right? And you can see it very clearly in medicine. Doctors don't learn about how to keep a person healthy. They learn about how to treat a symptom using a chemical, also known as a prescription drug. Or the importance of an injection for kids. These pediatricians want to keep kids healthy. They come into that field with that as one of their core values and intentions. But they get brainwashed, I guess is a good way to say it, conditioned to believe certain things, and only taught certain things by interests that fund every component around them in this wall or box that they put these pediatricians inside. And then they believe that they have to do the things they do in order to have a healthy kid. I can tell you that many of them most likely feel like something is wrong, but they don't act on doing something about it because the barriers around them have been built up so strong that if they speak out, there's fear of what's going to happen. There's ridicule from their colleagues. There's removal of their license so they can't do the thing that they set out to do, and on and on. And unfortunately, because these systems have done such a good job building this box around name your industry that the chemical companies are driving, we don't have a way out of it. So what we're doing and what you're doing is critically important to help people realize that this stuff is A, happening in the first place, and B, there's solutions to it. And I think one of the most important pieces is that we can get information disseminated faster today because of the internet, thankfully. I think more people than ever are coming to the realization that there are these problems in existence and that they need to start questioning everything and take responsibility and start learning. Open your mind and learn and ask questions. Critically important. Stop letting a talking head on television tell you what to think. Start asking questions, and we're no different, right? So anybody watching this, don't let my talking head make you believe something. Ask questions about what I'm saying and go look into it yourself and
Correct.
look at multiple sides of the story, right? You hear there's two sides to every story. Well, I would say there's at least three, right? Two sides to every coin. No, there's three. There's that edge, right? Check out all the sides of the story. And then once you have gathered lots of information from different places, then make then make your opinion up. And then ask more questions and ask more questions. The science is never settled, as they say. And when we can put empowering opportunities back into people's lives, which is what you really are doing a great job at, and we can get people taking responsibility over their own lives again, and if we can get people growing some of their own food again and working in harmony with their community and taking responsibility over how are their kids raised, how are their kids fed, what things go into their child's brains and bodies and that kind of thing, I think we have an opportunity to reverse this. And the soil conversation is a critically important one. The healthier our soil, the healthier our plants, the healthier our food, the healthier our us. And when we get people focused on taking care of the soil as like a number one step, and then growing, putting plants into that healthier soil, which helps grow the healthier food and have that growing close to you so that you can go outside and pick that food or go into your greenhouse and pick that food and consume it. You've now got fast food, faster than any fast food chain can ever deliver to you. And you've got life force in that food, nutrient density in that food, healing properties in that food. That will help bring out the best in you. Now we've got a good foundation to go build upon removing many of these other things that are currently dragging people and society down, stealing our life force, right? Putting us into hate to say it, slavery type of a position, which I currently believe that we are in that type of a position right now. Based on what I said, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I just want to say that I think that your work over the last 22 months has been phenomenal. You're enabling people, and one of my favorite sayings has to do with the fact that the people who talk about changing and the people who don't change are the same. It's the people who are acting upon changing, right? Who are actually doing something. And I think that you are, major contributors. It's not only for freedom and truth and independence and knowledge, it is for health. And, I visited a farm developed by a tribe in Northwest Washington that had a huge suicide rate. What was their solution? A farm to grow their own food. Awesome. Because they knew, right? So when you look at suicide rates, those are doctors, dentists, veterinarians, pharmacists. You kind of have to wonder with your previous statement relative to that. But the fact is that people do know how to heal. Get your hands in the soil, right? Yeah. And as for all of those who are in roles where they are feeling that they can't move out of it. They can't maneuver because the business model is so sophisticated to support the status quo. They have a choice. They really do have a choice. It might not be the best choice. People have had to make very hard choices in the last few years.
Sure.
Right? And those are our heroes because they're standing up for their principle.
Yep.
But today is a great day to make that change. Why not? Why not be benefiting those across all of humanity? And it's not just, it's the planet, it's the animals, it's the plants, it's everything. So the do no harm shouldn't just be for the medical industry. It should be for all of us.
Yeah.
Right?
Completely.
So anyway,
Yeah.
I think you're just doing a great job, Matthew and Jim, and keeping up the momentum, the activity level, the participation with so many other collaborating groups. I love that. It's phenomenal. You're not isolating yourself and going, we're just doing this, to embrace others is something that absolutely has to happen if we're going to have success in this space of health and growing your own food. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, our business is 100% collaboration focused. We know that nothing can be achieved with us hoarding it, doing it ourselves, controlling it. We are not operating in that methodology. We know collaboration is key. Each of us need all of us, and all of us need each of us. And the
Right.
better everybody does, the better everybody does. And humans deserve to be empowered. We need to lift the veil and really expose the truth and let people decide. Do we want this or do we want a better way? Do I enjoy having my children sick all the time? Constant ear infections and sinus infections and asthmas and allergies and all of those things that are so prevalent in our young children today. Do we enjoy that? Do we think that's normal? Or do we want our children to be more vibrant and healthy and full of life and able to concentrate and able to learn by being empowered? I think there's a lot of potential in humanity that is currently being suppressed and untapped, and that it's time for us to really unify around that ascension of possibility, which is here for all of us.
Right.
We are marvels of creation. Nature is infinitely abundant, greater than we ever can understand, I think, at this point. And as we start to really operate from a different place, acting in terms of frequency, energy, and vibration, as Tesla talks about, and really putting ourselves in a position where we're utilizing all of the abundance nature has to provide for us, right? We have abundant energy, we have abundant food and resources in that way. There's abundance all around us, but we're believed that we're in a scarce ecosystem. It's not true. And more people every day are waking up to realize that this is the truth. Abundance is the truth. It is the way. And what you're doing, what we're doing, what so many other great people around the world are doing today is very inspiring.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope that everybody watching today has some hope in their hearts and some willingness to act on how you're truly feeling inside. If something feels like it's not right, that's your emotional guidance system telling you you need to do something different. That emotions are a guidance system, truly. And we've lost touch with our gut feeling, right? We've lost touch with that. And it's time to reclaim that power that we have, that mother's intuition, as they say, for women. You've got that, women. Utilize it. Pay attention to it. What's it telling you? And I think more and more we have these opportunities to make change, but it can't be done alone. So if you have solutions, anyone watching today, if you have ideas on solutions, reach out to us. If you want to connect with Robin and what she's doing, we'll make sure that you have that ability as well. Reach out to us at Food Forest Abundance or get in contact with me directly. We want to help. We want to make a better world for everybody, one full of all the things we talked about with the abundance and the vitality and health and on and on. And it's going to take a community and collaboration to really win this war. So, Robin, thank you for joining us today. And before we sign off here, why don't you let everybody know again where to find you on social media, if you have those places. We do have your website shown there on the bottom. And anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up?
Yeah, the website is there. Encourage individuals who are stakeholders in this movement to make contact with us. And we're on social media, LinkedIn and Twitter, Facebook, so on and so forth. And just be assured that we will continue to work with Food Forest Abundance and share resources, because I think that's a very powerful way for us to collectively move at a faster pace, greater momentum. And again, I just really am grateful for this opportunity, as well as all of my interactions with Food Forest Abundance. So greatly appreciate it. You have a great day, Matthew.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you joining us today, sharing your wisdom and knowledge that you've acquired over the past 20 years with Global Food Collaborative. And it's what you're doing is just tremendous. And I thank you for your tireless effort and for joining us here today and providing such value to our audience. So thank you very much. Thank you to all of the viewers and listeners for joining us on another incredible episode of the Jim Gale Show. We hope you found value in what we spoke about today. Please remember to like and subscribe and share and leave us some comments and feedback if you are finding value in what we're doing. And with that, we wish you an incredible day. We'll be seeing you again very soon. Robin, if you'd like to hop off, you're more than welcome to. I'll play a couple ads and we'll have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much.
At Weston A. Price Foundation, we're dedicated to restoring nutrient-dense, farm-fresh foods to the human diet. We look to ancient food and health practices for clues on how to live our healthiest, most vibrant lives today. Join the mission and check out our exclusive membership details at westonaprice.org. As a member, you'll receive our quarterly journal on wise traditions in food, farming, and the healing arts, our annual shopping guide, monthly access to private Q&A sessions with experts, consultations on state laws, regulations, and policies, including food freedom legislation, and so much more. Weston A. Price Foundation. Let's return to wise, traditional foods.
Hey, Jim Gale Show listeners, again, thank you for tuning in. We love having you here. We're so honored. And, I want to give you a little bit of exciting news. We've decided to offer complimentary food forest strategy sessions with a certified permaculture designer. These are 30-minute sessions where you get to sit down with someone who can really help you with a strategy for your own property. It's a great chance for you to ask some questions and learn and just really to dig into what's possible. This is 30 minutes with someone who's certified, knows all about permaculture, and what's possible using this incredible science and working with nature. So head over to foodforestabundance.com and schedule your 30-minute food forest strategy session today. Again, that's foodforestabundance.com. And remember, get yourself registered for that 30-minute strategy session. And for doing so, we're going to give you a $100 coupon as well. So get over there, have some fun, learn about what's possible for you and your own property, and let's get growing some food. Thanks again for tuning in to the Jim Gale Show. Hey, I hope everybody enjoyed the show today. What a fascinating conversation. You know, the possibilities for human empowerment are really massive. And today we have opportunities all around us to make change. And it's time we also start speaking up with our dollars. You know, what are you putting your dollars towards? What are you permitting to be okay? When you go into, a store, let's say you need to buy cleaning products for yourself. Are you going to Walmart and buying from Procter & Gamble or Johnson & Johnson a product that is full of chemicals, that has, a safety type of lid on it that, it can't be utilized in gray water, and if your kids happen to drink a little bit of it, they can end up dead? Or are you making better choices with that? Are you using vinegar and water to do your cleaning? Because vinegar and water, we know, can clean just as well, if not better, and it's not going to kill your child, and it's not full of toxic chemicals that are going to cause, itchiness and sore eyes and irritate lungs and on and on. Are you making those kind of conscious choices? The solutions remain embarrassingly simple. We hear that Bill Mollison quote often, especially here at Food Forest Abundance. The quote goes like this: although the problems of the world seem increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple. And it's so empowering to know that the solutions are embarrassingly simple. They're available for all of us. We just have to look, ask better questions, make better choices, think better thoughts, act with better actions. And the more all of us do that, the better our results will be. Again, I hope you found this interview today, this conversation with Robin, valuable. Hope you took something away that you can implement into your own life, even if it's a new way of thinking. Thank you again so much for joining us on the Jim Gale Show, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Have an amazing day. This is officially over.